Well, we are here today to continue our retelling of the Exodus narrative, our exploration of Moses' second book in the Torah, Exodus, and a series that we call the Biblical Moses that Hollywood forgot. I have no videos for you today. I know it's been a while since we've shown a video. They're coming, but not just yet, not for today. Today, the text is sufficient unto itself. Let's see where we were previously in Exodus, the biblical Moses that Hollywood forgot last week. We, of course, are following Moses as he leads the children of Israel out from the land of Egypt into the desert, into the wilderness. And last week, they had no water and they had no food. They were hungry from water, lack of water and lack of food. And this really just captures the sentiment of the two passages that we studied last week in chapter 16. The sons of Israel said to Moses and Aaron, "Would that we had died by the Lord's hand in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat, when we ate bread to the full, for you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Sure, it was a lot worse than that. It really captures how quickly, on a dime, the people of faith can turn into a sniveling, whining group of toddlers. Right? And the patience that Moses and Aaron needed to extend toward them, not to mention that the Lord extended to them. And of course, he provided them, first of all, potable water, and then secondly, the manna, the frosted flakes, that were on the ground that they collected every day, and they were satisfied and they were fed. Of course, the question that will remain in the back, in between the lines of Scripture, is, "Lord God, what have you done for me lately?" And we're going to see today the waters of Meribah and the waters of Massa. We're going to see once again the Lord is going to test, he's going to prove his people to see if they can trust him in anything beyond and extending past the good times. By the good times, I'm referring to, things like the angel of the Lord passing over the Hebrew firstborn and the children of Israel being liberated from Egypt overnight. And for example, the crossing of the Red Sea, 2 walls of water. It's easy to believe when God's power is undeniably on display. Can you trust him when he's not showing off for you, when he's not extending his hand of power? And here we get to chapter 17. And chapter 17 includes, again, another 2 stories of the children of Israel having to extend faith, having to generate faith, and having challenges, facing challenges. And that reminds us, even before we get to the text, it reminds us that we're not reading about 2-dimensional flannel graph characters. We're reading about real people in real situations who are experiencing real crises and having truly some existential crises or crises of faith. And what God's reaction is, what their leadership reaction, and what the people's reaction must be. Let's take a look at the text. Then all of the congregation of the sons of Israel journeyed by stages. See, the Jewish people always into acting, even by the big into theater, into performance. They journeyed by stages. No, they, step by step, from the wilderness of sin. I'm just reading the text. From the wilderness of sin, technically, according to the command of the Lord. Remember, they're following the Lord. The Lord is manifesting himself as Shekinah glory in the cloud and the fire, and they are following him. Moses is following the cloud, they're following Moses. So stage by stage by stage, step by step by step, according to the command of the Lord. Again, the covenantal name of God, Jehovah, Adonai. And they camped at Rephidim, and, well, this is a familiar concept. There is no water for the people to drink. There is no water for the people to drink. So, one more time, who'd have thunk we're in the desert and we found another place where there's no water. What a surprise. All right. So, what are the people? We know how they reacted in the previous chapter, right? Chapter 16 kicked off with just the same idea, same concept, same situation. We know how the people responded. Wine, 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 right? Okay. And this is actually my imitation of Moses. Playing the world's, no, tiniest fire. No, it's not no, Moses' response as a man of God would, not like a cynical 21st century Jewish believer would in this room. No water for the people. How are they going to respond? Therefore, it doesn't say, and the people. It doesn't say, so the people. It doesn't say just the people. Therefore. As in, Moses writing this, right? As if it's the most natural thing in the world that when the Jewish people come up against an obstacle like no water, therefore they whined. Therefore they complained. Therefore they were upset. Therefore they lost it. Right? Not just the most natural response in the world would be for the people of God, the covenant nation, the chosen people, although in technicality they hadn't officially been technically chosen yet. But nonetheless, God's covenant people respond negatively to the challenge at hand. And this time, we move from, remember the word that was used last week? We saw several times the nation of Israel grumbled, they complained, they whined. This time it's a stronger word that's used. And the word translated quarrel is actually pretty good. They quarreled with him. They contended with Moses. It is as if they are ready to take Moses to court. Here's what happens. Moses following that cloud, remember that is God himself. Moses follows the covenant God. The people follow Moses. He leads them to a place where there's no water. The people realize there's no water. And what's the first thing they want to do? They look at Moses and they say, we got a bone to pick with you. In fact, that's the kind of language that one would appoint a special counsel. I want to appoint a special counsel to investigate your leadership because it stinks. Okay? And we're thirsty. Right? We are ready to take, where's Judge Wapner? Where's Judge Judy? Because we're ready to take you to court. And they said, give us water that we may, that's a demand. It's a demand. This is Veruca salt. Do you know what Veruca salt is? From Willy Wonka. I want it now, Daddy. I want a Oompa Loompa now, Daddy. Right? Give us water that we may drink, Daddy. Moses said to them, why do you want to take me to court? Why do you want to quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord? Moses is not saying that he doesn't have a self-aggrandizing opinion of himself, but he realizes that if you challenge Moses, You're really challenging the Lord. You want to sue me? Why do you want to sue the Lord? Why do you want to test the Lord? Why do you want to provoke the Lord? Why? The King James Version has this wonderful translation. Wherefore do ye tempt the Lord? Tempt the Lord to what? Why I oughta, right? To the moon, right? You say what God, how God could react to the demonstrably lacking faith of the Jewish people. It is quite possible Moses is, I believe, communicating to the Jewish people that their fair weather faithlessness might not long be tolerated by that covenant God. Why do you contend with me? Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord? It's not good for the health. But the people thirsted there for water. So again, it's very human. The people are thirsty. They have felt needs. And when you have a felt physical need, it's very hard to be a rational person of faith. I get it. Moses gets it. But they thirsted for water, and they grumbled against Moses. There's that word from chapter 16, makes a return. They whined, they contended, they grumbled, and murmured against Moses and said, why now have you brought us up from Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? This is the secret origin of every Jewish mother. Right here. So, why should I sit in the dark? Why don't you ever, maybe I should just kill myself now, right? This is the traditional whining, the Jewish whining. Here it is. It wasn't invented in New York. It wasn't invented in Eastern Europe. It was invented in the Sinai wilderness. And notice, by the way, how they mention their livestock. And they were so hungry before, right? It was one of the things I pointed out last week is that they did have livestock. They came out with herds and flocks. They had livestock they could have eaten for food. They didn't want to break into their stash, basically. They wanted to preserve that stash against a rainy day. In the meantime, they had no food to eat, so God gave them the frosted flakes, the manna. Now it'll be stuck in your head too. All right. So look at this charge. Why have you, they're not just asked, have you brought us to the wilderness to kill us like they did before? No. Why have you brought, how long, mister, how long have you been beating your wife, right? Why have you brought us up from Egypt to kill us and our children? Why, Santa Claus? Why? Why now have you brought us to kill us? And our children, what did our children ever do to you, Moses? And our livestock. Pete is on our side. Why would you do this to nice people like us? Why have you done such a horrible thing? So what are they accusing Moses of? All that effort, 10 plagues, God delivered the parting of the Red Sea. They accuse Moses and God, because Moses is his man, his servant, accused of liberating them from Egypt specifically for the purpose of killing them. This is how irrational the Jewish people have become. And again, felt needs, thirsty, tired, on the road, don't know how long it's going to take them to get there, a completely new situation. They've gone from, it was slavery, but at least they knew where their next meal was coming from. At least they knew they would have a roof over their head. They had reliability. They had certitude in their life. Now they've moved off into a complete lack of certitude, following after a pillar of cloud to an unseen land that they have only heard about, that no Jew had been to for 400 years, and they are very uncomfortable. Some of us can be like that too. God moves us into a new circumstance, new situation, and new environment, whether it be work, family, home, place to live. And we often feel at sea. We often feel discombobulated, and we don't know how to react, and we don't know where to turn, and we don't know which end is up. And when we're in this kind of situation, it's very easy because the what is so confusing and uncertain to lose our faith or to have our faith challenged. But this is one of those passages that helps us to remember that we may not always have control over the circumstances of our lives, the wheres, the whats, the hows, processes, but we always know the whom. We always must remember that when every other interrogative is uncertain, the what, the when, the why, the how, the where, that we can always rely and trust on the whom, to be grammatically correct, and that's God. So, that's the question that the Jewish people put to Moses. Talk about chutzpah. This is chutzpah that the Jewish people are exhibiting. So Moses, put yourself now, we've spent a lot of time trying to put you in the shoes, the sandals of the Israelites, but let's put ourselves in the sandals of Moses. Moses, hearing this, apparently feared that this disgruntled crowd that's not just complaining, it's not just murmuring anymore, grumbling, but is now really wanting to quarrel and contend, and they're really getting rowdy, that they could easily transform into an angry mob. It is always, when you read just the text, you say, well, I can't imagine people, good people, these are good people, who were just afraid. How could they so rapidly become a mob? It beggars the imagination. Have you read the news the past 2 years? See how easily mobs form when people are upset or fearful or angry? Moses apparently feared that this crowd is going to turn into a mob. And he says to the Lord, he cries out to the Lord, which in times of need, in times of peril, in times of uncertainty, is precisely the move that one should make, right? When you don't know the what, the why, the when, the how, the where, you go to the who. You cry out to the whom. You cry out to the Lord, to the covenant God, Jehovah, Adonai. And he says, what shall I do to this people? A little more, and they will stone me. Moses, the liberator, the one who has, for 10 plagues, fearless in the face of Pharaoh, now cries out to the Lord, what am I going to do about these people? Now, generally speaking, Moses identifies either the people of Israel as either my people, in other words, my clan, my God, or your people. Now it's gone to this people, okay? Moses has taken a step back from the Hebrews and say, what am I going to do, not for or about, but to this people? They're going to kill me. Give them a little bit more time, and the mob is going to get so agitated that they will stone me. God gives them a solution. The Lord said to Moses, pass before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel. In other words, don't hide from them. Go right out to them. Look them in the eyes. Walk across them. Don't go alone. Take other leaders with you. Unified group. And take in your hand your staff. That rod, that symbol of God's potency and his power. The same rod that struck the Nile and turned to blood. The same rod that held over the Red Sea. The sea parted. Don't go empty-handed. Take the staff, take the rod with which you struck the Nile. And go. Do what? Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb. Horeb is another word for Sinai. Now, Sinai is an actual mountain, but this is a range. Horeb is the range of which Sinai is a part. So they are very near Mount Sinai, but they're not there yet. Okay, they're in the vicinity. So go to the rock that I'll show you, the rock at Horeb, and you will strike the rock. Take out some of your frustrations. You'll strike the rock, and water will come out of it, that the people may drink. So, in the desert, so I read, I've never done this myself. Apparently, there are some rocks that are made, they're soft limestone, and if you break through the limestone, there's water source that will come out. Now, that's pretty good if you're camping with a small group of people. How exceptional would it be if you're with several 100,000 and you need water for several hundred? That's where the miracle is, right? So not that Moses hits the rock and water comes out. Apparently that's reproducible. The quantity of water and at the direction and at the exact moment that the people needed it, that's the miracle. So Moses is going to hit the rock and water comes out. Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. Why does he do so in the sight of the elders of Israel? If you make sure that you have the people's leaders, the sub-leaders, and the substrata of leadership with you, then you can keep the mob under control. One person can't control a mob, but one person with leaders of the group that has comprised the mob can contain a mob. So Moses does this, brings forth water in the sight of the elders of Israel. He named the place two names, Massa and Meribah. Massa means to prove, a place of proving, a place of testing. And Meribah means strife. So, name the place Massa and Meribah because of this quarrel of the sons of Israel and because they tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? And that basically is that's the subtext to the whole problem of whining. And we always come back to this. Why would you, if you have a need, and that need is not immediately being met, is your first response to say, is God with me or not? God, are you real? Are you really there? Or have I believed a fairy tale? Right? Because you're not meeting my need at this right moment, right now, immediate moment. I give myself the freedom to completely doubt whether you really are real or whether you're with me or not. Right? It's foolishness. Right? Should have called the rock foolish because of the foolishness of the people. But the humanity shines through. And so they test the Lord saying, is he with us or is he not? And interestingly enough, the waters of Massa and Meribah. you can actually go through a huge portion of the remainder of the Torah and the Psalms and even the prophets. And this incident, Massah and Meribah, even it's short right here. It's short in this passage. It's just an abbreviated passage. Nonetheless, this event, historical event, stands out in Hebrew Bible, and prophets and psalmists and the writers keep pointing back. Do not be like those who tested God at Massah and Meribah. The prophets and the psalmists always put, this is an example of how not to be. Do not follow the example of your forefathers. Right? Or they use it as an example of how patient and forbearing our God is. Right? That he can overlook even the most egregious whining and contention from a people called those who wrestle with God, Israel. Right? Let's continue. Now we get to the war with Amalek, and this ends the passage. This is the second conflict of this particular passage. Then Amalek came and fought against Israel right then and there. Right? While they're tired, while they're thirsty, while they are just coming through one crisis of faith, we have now the origin of really a 6th century long antagonistic relationship between the Israelites and this nation called Amalek. Who is Amalek? The Amalekites are distantly related to the Hebrews, believe it or not. Some of our most passionate arguments are deeply felt with our own family. And they have a common patriarch. See, the Jewish people and Amalek have a common ancestor in their family tree. You have Isaac. Isaac has 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. Amalek comes from Esau and Esau's son, Eliphaz. So Amalek, the grandson of Esau, great-grandson of Isaac. And so even though they're cousins, the Amalekites fought with Israel at Rephidim. And it's a terrible attack. We may look at, in fact, we will be looking at the details of that attack momentarily, which are given in Deuteronomy as an aside. But basically, while they're tired, they've just gotten their needs met, and Amalek, seeing the vulnerability of the Hebrews, they attack their rear. And they begin to pick off. You ever see like National Geographic documentaries, and you see how herds move, and then you have the sick or the young or a little slower, and then the predators pick off the ones who are straggling toward the back. This is exactly what happens. Amalek begins to do that with Israel's vulnerable rear, and they attack them from the rear, and it's a sneak attack at the most vulnerable point, and this kind of dishonor goes down in Jewish history. So let's see how it folds out. Moses says to Joshua, Joshua's Moses' assistant, first time he's mentioned in Exodus. We learn a lot more about Joshua later on in the Torah, of course, in his own book. Choose men for us. Joshua is going to serve as his military attaché. Go, choose men for us and go out. Fight, be my general, in other words. Fight against Amalek. Tomorrow, I'm going to station myself on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. So, go, be the commander, fight in a military engagement, Hebrews against Amalek. I will not be fighting with you. I'm 80 years old, right? Okay, give me a break. I'm going up on a hill, but it's a hill that will be very visible to everybody down in the valley fighting. And I will raise my staff. What is the staff? The visible